Imagine a shadow that knows your schedule even better than you do. A whisper in the dark that swells into a roar of terror. For so many victims, this isn't a movie. It's their horrifying reality. He was a phantom, a collector of lives, leaving a trail of fear wherever he went. But he never, ever anticipated the day one woman would look back, not with fear, but with a steely resolve to stop him. Welcome to Unlimited Crime Stories, where we delve into the most gripping cases. If you believe in fighting back, make sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on stories of incredible courage. Stalking. It's a word that might make you think of some fleeting, unwanted attention. But for anyone who's truly lived through it, especially when the stalker is methodical, relentless, well, it's nothing short of psychological war. It's this slow, creeping invasion that just dismantles your sense of safety, your peace of mind, and sometimes even who you are. The statistics are genuinely chilling. Millions are stalked each year, and a lot of the time the perpetrator is someone they know. But what happens when the stalker isn't just a one-off case? What if he's a serial predator, honing his twisted craft with every victim, getting bolder, more insidious? And what happens when one of his targets decides she absolutely won't be just another name on his list, another life shattered? This is the story of that very confrontation, of an ordinary life thrown into unimaginable peril, and the extraordinary courage it took to fight back. Stories like these are why Unlimited Crime Stories exists, to share tales of resilience and justice. Sarah Miller was, by all accounts, a creature of habit, but in a way that brought her a quiet sort of joy. Her small apartment, tucked away on the third floor of an old pre-war building in a bustling but friendly neighborhood, was her sanctuary. When the city's often gray skies decided to clear, sunlight would stream through the big casement windows, lighting up dust motes dancing in the air and showing off the vibrant colors of the many plants she lovingly cared for. Her life was woven from simple things: her job as a graphic designer for a small, independent publishing house, her weekly yoga class, her Saturday morning trips to the local farmer's market, and evenings often spent curled up with a book, the comforting smell of herbal tea and old paper always around. She wasn't a recluse, not at all. Sarah had a tight-knit circle of friends, people she'd known since college. They'd often get together for casual dinners, check out gallery openings, or just go for long walks talking about everything and nothing. She valued these connections deeply, but she also really cherished her solitude, the quiet hum of her own company. She was observant, a trait that served her well in her design work, noticing the subtle shifts in color, the balance of a layout, the unspoken message in an image. This perceptiveness, though, was about to be tested in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. Sarah's routine was predictable, not because she lacked imagination, but because she found a sense of order grounding. Monday to Friday, her alarm blared at 6:30 a.m. Coffee, a quick look at the news, and then the 20-minute walk to her office. It was a route she'd only slightly varied over the years, sometimes taking Elm Street for its lovely tree canopy, other times Maple Avenue for the quaint bakery with its daily dose of sweetness in the window display. She genuinely enjoyed this walk. It was her time to gather her thoughts, to watch the city waking up around her. Her colleagues would say she was diligent, creative, and maybe a little reserved, but always kind. She wasn't one for office gossip, preferring to focus on her projects, meticulously crafting book covers and layouts that often earned quiet praise from authors and editors. Her workspace reflected her personality, neat, organized, with a few personal touches, a framed photo of her and her friends on a hiking trip, a collection of uniquely shaped stones, and, of course, a small, resilient succulent. Life wasn't some grand adventure in the usual sense, but it was hers, built on a foundation of small joys and a quiet sense of purpose. She was independent, self-sufficient, and felt secure in the little world she'd carved out for herself. She moved through the city with an easy confidence, aware of her surroundings but not weighed down by excessive fear. The occasional late-night walk home from a friend's place or a movie was always done with sensible caution, but nothing had ever given her real cause for alarm. Her building had decent security, her neighborhood felt safe, and she believed in the general goodness of people, perhaps a touch naively, but it was a belief that had, until then, served her well. She was really an every woman, living a life that was relatable in its normalcy, its ups and downs no more dramatic than most. It was this very normalcy, this unassuming rhythm of her existence, that made what was about to happen all the more jarring, all the more terrifying. Because into this well-ordered life, a shadow was about to fall, a presence unseen but increasingly felt, ready to dismantle everything she held dear. It started subtly, so subtly in fact, that Sarah initially brushed it off as coincidence, or maybe just her own mind playing tricks on her. The first little tremor in her well-ordered world was almost impossible to notice. She'd be walking home from work, taking her usual route down Maple Avenue, and suddenly get that fleeting sensation of being watched. A prickle on the back of her neck, a feeling that a pair of eyes lingered just a moment too long. She'd glance over her shoulder, scan the faces in the crowd, but see nothing out of the ordinary, just commuters rushing home, shoppers dawdling, the usual city buzz. She'd scold herself for being overly imaginative, maybe a side effect of reading too many thrillers before bed. Then came the calls. Unknown number. She'd answer, and there would just be silence. Not dead air, but a silence that felt charged. She could hear faint breathing on the other end, a soft, almost imperceptible rhythm. The first few times she'd say hello, once or twice, then hang up annoyed, figuring it was a wrong number or a telemarketer with a bad connection. But they kept coming. Once a week, then twice. Always that same unnerving stillness before the line eventually cut off. She started letting calls from unknown numbers go to voicemail, but no message was ever left. He started appearing in the periphery of her daily life. A man she didn't recognize, but whose face began to stick in her mind through repeated, fleeting sightings. He was unremarkable in a way that was almost remarkable itself. Average height, medium build, nondescript clothing, often a baseball cap pulled low. The kind of guy you'd pass on the street 100 times and never remember. Except, she was starting to remember him. She saw him near her office building one morning, seemingly lost in a newspaper. Then later that week at the farmer's market she always went to on Saturdays, standing by a flower stall, not buying anything, just watching. A knot of unease started to tighten in Sarah's stomach. Was it the same man? Or was she just getting paranoid, her mind connecting unrelated dots? She tried to rationalize it. Big city, millions of people, there's bound to be some overlap. Yet, the sightings felt too coincidental. He never approached her, never spoke, never made direct eye contact if she happened to look his way. He was just there. A ghost in the machine of her daily routine. The gifts started a few weeks later. Small, insignificant things at first. A single, slightly wilted daisy left on her doorstep. She assumed it was from a neighbor, a misdelivered gesture. Then a small, smooth stone, similar to the ones she collected, placed on the windshield of her car, which she rarely used, preferring to walk. This was more unsettling. How would anyone know she collected stones? She hadn't mentioned it to many people. The digital footprint began to emerge too. An anonymous email with a subject line that was simply a question mark. The body of the email totally empty. Then new anonymous followers on her rarely used public social media profile, accounts with no posts, no friends, just a default avatar. Each incident, if you looked at it alone, could probably be explained away. But woven together, they started to form a really disturbing pattern. The part of her mind that analyzed human behavior and design choices started to scream that this wasn't random. This felt like reconnaissance. Methodical. She mentioned the strange occurrences to her closest friend, Chloe, over coffee. Chloe, always the pragmatist, initially tried to reassure her. It's probably nothing, Sarah. Stress can make you see things, you know? And the silent calls? Annoying, but it happens. But as Sarah detailed the frequency, the recurring face, the oddly specific stone, Chloe's expression shifted from dismissive to concerned. Okay, Chloe said slowly, "That is weird. Especially the stone." The sense of being watched just intensified. She started to notice him, or someone who fit his description, more regularly. On her commute, on the street corner near her yoga studio, sometimes even lingering across the street from her apartment building in the evenings. He never did anything overtly threatening, which was part of what made it all so insidious. How do you report a feeling? How do you explain to the police that a man who just stands there, who just happens to be in the same places as you, is making your skin crawl with a primal kind of fear? There was no explicit threat, no physical contact. Just a persistent, unnerving presence that was slowly, systematically, wearing away her sense of security. Her sanctuary, her well-ordered life, was beginning to feel like a cage, with unseen eyes constantly pressing in. The shadow had arrived, and it was settling in for a long, terrifying stay. That subtle unease, which had been a quiet hum in the background of Sarah's life, started to build into a deafening roar of fear. The stalker, no longer satisfied with just fleeting appearances and anonymous gestures, began to escalate his actions. Each move was more brazen, more personal, more terrifying than the last. His methods were a chilling mix of psychological warfare and a shocking disregard for her boundaries, all designed to isolate and intimidate her. As this story unfolds, if you find yourself holding your breath, remember to hit that like button for unlimited crime stories. It helps us bring more awareness to these critical issues. The silent phone calls became more frequent, sometimes multiple times a day. Occasionally, a barely audible whisper could be heard, a single word like "soon" or "watching." The anonymity of it was terrifying. The voice was muffled, indistinct, giving her no clue about his identity beyond the chilling confirmation that he was, indeed, focused on her. Her email inbox, once just a tool for work and staying in touch, became a source of dread. More anonymous emails arrived, sometimes with attachments, a photo of her apartment building taken from across the street, a picture of her favorite park bench, empty as if it were waiting. One email contained a news clipping about a local woman who had been attacked, with a single sentence typed beneath. She wasn't careful enough. He started to show a disturbing knowledge of her routines and preferences, things she hadn't shared publicly. One morning, she found a small, perfectly ripe avocado on her doorstep, her favorite breakfast. Another day, a printout of a poem by her favorite obscure poet was tucked under her windshield wiper. These weren't gifts of affection. They were statements of intrusion. "I know you. I see you. I can reach you." The message was clear, and it was chilling. His physical presence became more obvious. He was no longer just a fleeting figure in the periphery. She'd see him parked down the street from her apartment late at night, the faint glow of a cigarette his only discernible feature in the darkness. One evening, as she walked home from a late dinner with friends, she heard footsteps echoing hers, keeping pace just a little too closely. When she sped up, they sped up. When she crossed the street, they crossed too. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She ducked into a 24-hour convenience store, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and watched through the window as he paused briefly outside, looked directly at the store, and then calmly walked away. He knew she'd seen him. He wanted her to know. Her friends, especially Chloe, became increasingly worried. They urged her to go to the police, but Sarah hesitated. What could she really tell them? That a man was looking at her? That he knew her favorite fruit? It felt flimsy, almost paranoid, even to her own ears, despite the terror coiling in her gut. Stalking often involves actions that, on their own, might seem minor or not even criminal. It's the pattern, the repetition, the clear intent to cause fear, that truly defines it. The psychological toll was immense. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren, sent jolts of adrenaline through her. She triple-checked the locks on her doors and windows, bought new blinds for more privacy, and started varying her routes to and from work, a constant, exhausting game of evasion. Her focus at work suffered terribly. Deadlines loomed, but her mind was a whirlwind of fear and anxiety. She became jumpy, irritable, a shadow of her former self. The vibrant plants in her apartment, once a source of joy, began to droop from neglect, mirroring her own wilting spirit. He seemed to almost revel in her fear, in the disruption he was causing. One afternoon, she returned to her apartment to find her doormat slightly askew. Nothing was taken, nothing overtly damaged, but the message was crystal clear: I can get this close. The boundary of her home, her sanctuary, had been breached, if only symbolically. The feeling of being safe nowhere was suffocating. His actions weren't just confined to her. He began to subtly intimidate those around her. Chloe received a silent call on her unlisted number, something that deeply unnerved them both, as Sarah was the only one who would have connected Chloe to her. How did he even get Chloe's number? The tendrils of his obsession were reaching out, trying to sever Sarah's support system, to isolate her further. This is a common tactic, designed to make the victim feel entirely alone and vulnerable. The police, when she finally gathered the courage to make an initial report, were sympathetic but explained how difficult it was to act without a direct threat or clear evidence of a crime. "We can keep an eye on your street," one officer told her, "but unless he does something more concrete, our hands are somewhat tied." This was a common and incredibly frustrating experience for many stalking victims. The legal system often struggles with the slippery nature of stalking until it escalates to unambiguous criminal acts. The serial aspect of his nature was something Sarah only began to piece together through fractured whispers online. Searching for information about stalking, she stumbled upon a small, obscure online forum where victims shared their stories. One anonymous post described a pattern of behavior eerily similar to her own experience: the silent calls, the nondescript man, the oddly personal gifts, the slow escalation. The post was old, from a different city, but the methodology was chillingly familiar. Then she found another and another. Small variations, different locations, different timelines, but the core tactics resonated with a terrifying clarity. This wasn't his first time. He had a playbook. He was a collector of fear, moving from one life to another, leaving a trail of shattered peace. This realization didn't lessen her fear, it amplified it. She wasn't just dealing with a disturbed individual, she was dealing with an experienced predator. And his trail of fear and shattered lives was long and dark. The sheer weight of the constant vigilance, the gnawing fear, and that profound sense of isolation had been steadily piling up, pressing down on Sarah until she felt like she was literally drowning. The escalation had been relentless, a calculated campaign to dismantle her life, piece by piece. Her apartment, once her haven, now felt like a glass box. Every shadow seemed to lengthen. Every unexpected noise made her heart leap into her throat. Her work, once a source of pride and creativity, became an almost impossible task, her concentration shattered by intrusive thoughts and that ever-present hum of anxiety. Friendships became strained. She withdrew, partly to protect her friends, partly because she felt no one could truly understand the insidious terror that had become her constant companion. She was living on a knife edge, her nerves frayed to the point of breaking. We're about to get to a crucial moment in Sarah's story on Unlimited Crime Stories, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. The darkest moment arrived on a cold, rainy Tuesday evening. Sarah had forced herself to attend a work event, a book launch she had helped design. She'd tried to appear normal, to engage in conversations, to smile, but beneath the surface, a storm of anxiety was raging. She left early, the rain outside mirroring the bleakness in her soul. As she fumbled for her keys at her apartment door, her hands slick with rain and trembling, she saw it. Scratched into the paint of her door, crude but unmistakable, was a single, chilling word: mine. It wasn't just a word, it was a brand, a claim of ownership. It was the ultimate violation, a desecration of the last place she had felt even a sliver of security. The carefully constructed walls of her composure just crumbled. She stumbled into her apartment, locking the door, bolting it, leaning against it as if to physically hold back the encroaching darkness. Sobs racked her body, a raw, guttural sound of pure terror and despair. He had been there, at her door, close enough to touch it, to defile it. The anonymity was gone, replaced by a terrifying intimacy. For hours, she sat on the floor, huddled in the dark, the rain lashing against her windows like an angry spirit. The feeling of helplessness was absolute. She had gone to the police. They were aware, but seemingly powerless. She had changed her routines, fortified her apartment, but he was always a step ahead, his presence a suffocating miasma. The thought that this would never end, that she would live the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, her entire existence dictated by his obsession, was unbearable. Dark thoughts, fleeting but terrifying, flickered at the edges of her mind. Not really a desire to die, but a desperate, aching yearning for the torment to just stop. This was the abyss, the point where the fear was so overwhelming it threatened to extinguish her spirit entirely. She thought of the other women, the anonymous voices on the forum, their lives also appended, their peace stolen. How many had reached this point? How many had simply faded away, consumed by the fear? He was a virus, spreading his particular brand of terror, and she was just the latest host. The word serial echoed in her mind, not just as a descriptor of his actions, but as a prophecy of her own potential fate if she did nothing. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the sheer depth of her despair, the point where there seemed to be nowhere lower to fall. Or maybe it was a spark of the resilience she didn't even know she possessed. As the first gray light of dawn began to seep through her blinds, a new feeling began to stir amidst the fear and exhaustion. Anger. A cold, hard knot of fury. He had taken her peace, her joy, her sense of safety. He was trying to take her life, not necessarily by physical force, but by 1,000 psychological cuts. He wanted her to break, to become another ghost in his collection of shattered victims. And in that moment, staring at the faint outline of the rising sun, Sarah Miller made a decision. No. The word was a silent scream in her mind. No, you don't get to win. You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to do this to anyone else. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about fighting back. The thought was terrifying, almost as terrifying as the stalking itself, because it meant confronting the monster, stepping out of the shadows of victimhood and into the uncertain light of resistance. She didn't know how, not yet. She had no plan, no weapons, only a newfound, steely resolve. He had pushed her to the edge, but instead of falling, she found something to hold on to. He expected fear. He expected surrender. He didn't expect a fight. The fear was still there, a cold companion, but it was no longer the only emotion. It was now mingled with a determination that surprised even herself. She was tired of being hunted. She was tired of being afraid. He had made her a victim. Now she would make herself a survivor. And more than that, she would be the one to stop him. The turning point wasn't some grand, dramatic event. It was a quiet, internal shift, a reclaiming of her own agency in the face of overwhelming terror. The abyss had been reached, and from its depths, Sarah began to climb. Sarah's resolve was hardening. This is the kind of turning point we live for at Unlimited Crime Stories. If you're finding her story compelling and want to support our channel in telling more tales of survival and justice, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure that notification bell is on so you get alerted when we explore the next chapter in the fight against crime. Your engagement truly helps us. That decision to fight back solidified in Sarah's mind like ice. The fear hadn't just vanished, of course, but it was now channeled into a focused, cold anger. She knew she couldn't do this alone. Her first step? Revisit the police. But this time she'd be different. She wouldn't just be a scared victim. She'd be a partner in bringing him down. The journey Sarah is embarking on is intense. If you appreciate stories of empowerment, let us know by liking this video for Unlimited Crime Stories. Sarah spent the next few days meticulously documenting everything. Every silent call was logged with the date and time. Every unsettling email was printed out, screenshots taken of those anonymous social media profiles. She took pictures of the scratch on her door, the wilted flower, that oddly specific stone. She wrote down every single instance she had seen him, describing his appearance, his location, the time of day. She even detailed her discoveries on the online forum, highlighting the patterns that strongly suggested he was a serial offender. This documentation was crucial. It transformed her fear into a clear narrative of harassment, a pattern of behavior that was much harder to dismiss. Armed with her new, organized evidence, she She met with a detective who specialized in harassment and stalking cases, Detective Miller. No relation. A coincidence that brought a brief, ironic smile to Sarah's face. Detective Miller listened patiently, her expression serious as Sarah laid out the timeline, the escalation, and her theory about his serial nature. The detailed log, the photos, the forum posts. It painted a much clearer, more compelling picture than Sarah's earlier, more fragmented reports. "This is good, Sarah," Detective Miller said, her voice firm but reassuring. "This gives us something to really work with. His behavior is escalating, and the potential for him being a repeat offender is something we take very seriously." Detective Miller explained the legal hurdles they might face, but also outlined a potential strategy. They couldn't arrest him just for looking, but they could build a strong case for stalking and harassment, especially if his actions were causing her significant emotional distress and fear, which they clearly were. The key was to catch him in an act that crossed a definitive legal line, or to gather enough evidence of a sustained course of conduct to warrant a restraining order with real teeth, and potentially criminal charges. Sarah also took proactive steps for her own safety and to gather more evidence. On Detective Miller's advice, she installed a high-quality security camera outside her apartment door and another discreet one covering the street from her window. She started carrying a personal alarm and even took a self-defense class, not because she wanted a physical confrontation, but to feel more empowered and prepared. These actions were small, but each one chipped away at her sense of helplessness. She began to subtly change her routines again, but this time, it wasn't just about evasion. It was about observation. She became hyper-aware of her surroundings, not with that panicked energy of before, but with a focused intensity. She learned to scan crowds, to note cars that seemed out of place, to recognize subtle cues. In a way, she was turning his own tactics against him. The online forum became a source of unexpected strength. She shared her decision to fight back, anonymously of course, and received messages of support. One user, who claimed to have successfully helped identify her own stalker, gave her a crucial piece of advice. Stalkers like him, serial ones, often have a digital Achilles heel. They get arrogant. They reuse usernames, email fragments, or IP address patterns if they aren't sophisticated enough. Look for those digital breadcrumbs. This really resonated with Sarah. Her stalker was arrogant. That mind scratched on her door was a testament to his audacity. She began to delve deeper into the anonymous emails he'd sent. While the addresses themselves were gibberish, she examined the metadata, the raw source of the emails, looking for any consistent IP information, though often they were masked by VPNs. She cross-referenced the anonymous social media profiles, looking for any tiny overlap, any shared digital fingerprint with the old forum posts she suspected were linked to him. It was painstaking, often frustrating work, sifting through digital noise for hours on end. The fight was exhausting, like a second full-time job layered on top of her actual career and the constant emotional strain. But with each small step, each piece of information gathered, Sarah felt a flicker of control returning. She was no longer just prey. She was actively participating in her own rescue, carefully laying a trap for the man who had tried to steal her life. The hunter, in a way, was now being hunted. The breakthrough came from a combination of good old-fashioned police work and Sarah's determined digital sleuthing. Detective Miller's team had put a discreet watch on Sarah's building and began to notice a pattern with a specific, nondescript car that would park down the street for hours, often late at night, the same car Sarah had reported seeing. They ran the plates. It was registered to a Michael Anderson, a man with a sealed juvenile record and, more importantly, 2 prior harassment complaints in other states. Both had been dropped due to lack of evidence when the victims either moved or, understandably, stopped cooperating, a common outcome when fear and frustration overwhelm victims. At the same time, Sarah, fueled by caffeine and sheer determination, found a tiny digital thread. One of the anonymous social media profiles that had recently followed her used a recovery email address that, while mostly obscured, had a unique string of characters she recognized from a fragment in an old forum post describing a similar stalking case. It was a long shot, a tiny connection, but she immediately passed it to Detective Miller. Armed with a name, a vehicle, and that crucial digital breadcrumb, the police were able to secure a warrant for limited data from the social media platform. The information came back and confirmed it. Michael Anderson was behind the profile. They now had a direct link between the online harassment and a physical individual. The trap wasn't some dramatic, movie-style confrontation. It was quieter, more strategic. Based on his pattern of parking near her apartment on Tuesday nights, the very night he'd scratched mine on her door, the police set up a surveillance operation. Sarah stayed with Chloe, her apartment dark and seemingly empty. As predicted, Anderson's car appeared. He parked, watched the building for nearly an hour. Then he got out. He walked towards her building, carrying a small package. As he reached her front steps, and was caught red-handed on Sarah's security camera, attempting to leave another gift. This one later found to contain a dead bird and a note with more explicit threats. The police moved in. There was no struggle. Michael Anderson, the phantom who had terrorized Sarah and likely so many others, looked almost surprised, his face illuminated by the flashing police lights, his arrogance momentarily stripped away. He was ordinary, pathetic even, without the cloak of anonymity and the sick power he derived from his victim's fear. The arrest of Michael Anderson was the beginning of the end of Sarah's nightmare. The evidence Sarah had so meticulously collected, combined with the items found on him at the scene and the digital trail, was substantial. Several other women, contacted by police based on the patterns from the old forum posts and Anderson's known movements, bravely came forward. Their old fears were rekindled, but now mixed with a fragile hope for justice. His serial nature was finally laid bare for all to see. Anderson was charged with multiple counts of stalking, harassment, and making terroristic threats. Faced with the overwhelming evidence and the very real prospect of multiple victims testifying against him, he eventually pleaded guilty. He received a significant prison sentence. The legal system, often slow and frustrating, had in this instance worked. For Sarah, the journey to reclaim her life was gradual. The fear didn't just vanish overnight, but that suffocating weight had definitely lifted. Her apartment slowly, surely, became her sanctuary again. She started tending to her plants, which, much like her, began to thrive once more. She reconnected with friends, her laughter a little less guarded, her eyes a little brighter. She had faced the darkness and, in doing so, found an unshakable strength within herself. Her story is a powerful testament to resilience, the critical importance of meticulous documentation, and the immense courage it takes to say no more. She refused to be just another victim. She became the architect of her own liberation, and in doing so, likely saved others from enduring the same terrifying fate. This is the kind of outcome we champion at Unlimited Crime Stories. Stalking is a serious crime with devastating impacts. If Sarah's story resonated with you, or if you're concerned about someone's behavior, please remember that resources and support are available. We always include helpful links in the description below for organizations that can offer guidance and assistance. Thank you for joining us on Unlimited Crime Stories. If you found Sarah's fight for justice inspiring, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to Unlimited Crime Stories for more true crime narratives and stories of survival, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when we release new content. Your engagement helps us raise awareness about these important issues. And most importantly, if you see something or feel something is wrong, trust your instincts and reach out. You are not alone. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next story.